Thank you everyone for joining our event today. I'm Kelly from Business Tasmania and I'm joined by Stacey from the Tasmanian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. We're really pleased to be partnering together to be delivering the Building Better Workplaces support and resources for employers event today. So there'll be, firstly, to start with, I'll share with you a presentation about the Business Tasmania service, and then I'll hand over to Stacey to cover off on many great things in terms of workplaces, employees, everything you could possibly know, and great support to help you out as well. So before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay my respect to elders past and present and all Aboriginal people across the state. Looking at a summary of Business Tasmania once my slides will move. So bear with me just for a moment. Fantastic. So Business Tasmania, we're a statewide service and we exist to help you with anything at all business related. So from the very early dreaming stage, you might be sitting there and you're thinking about how to start a business, right through to running a business 1 day, 10 days, 10 years, any amount of time, any industry and any size of business can come to us for support. So the Business Tasmania team is incredibly passionate and we very much pride ourselves on providing the very best customer service and the very best solutions to help you every step of the way through your business journey. So we do that by many ways. You can contact the team via our 1800 number, which you'll see shortly. You can meet us at face-to-face events. We're running one of those tonight, or online events like this one today, and or email the team or connect with us on Facebook. So we get lots of varied questions and anything that comes to us is absolutely confidential and there's no cost to access our service. People come with a small question sometimes, just needing a little bit of information. You might have a new idea, it's exciting, you need to try and work out if it's viable to go forward with the idea. You might be having a challenge and it is a challenging operating environment right now with costs higher and many challenges that we face. So that is more of a common inquiry and we do have a lot of support we can offer to help you through these through the year. So on the screen you can see that we provide advice, we provide connections with the Department of State Growth, different areas, but we also have the finger on the pulse of who is out there in state and Australian government who can help you. So effectively we save you time, which saves you money and stress. Because, it's so very hard, when you're working in your business, it's so consuming. So we want to save you as much time as possible. We run events and workshops, as you can see there. We have business advisors and we give you access to digital mentors as well. We have many great tools and resources that we have available on our website and in hard copy often when you see us at events as well. A key offering I'd like to talk through that we often connect people with is the Tasmanian Business Advice Service. So this is a statewide network of very experienced independent business advisors that we contract to deliver one-on-one face-to-face advice tailored to you to meet your needs. Again, at no cost, you can access, if you have thinking about starting a business or you might have an Australian business number and it's less than 12 months old, you can start off with 2 hours of free advice. Once your Australian business number reaches 5 years old. No, reaches 12 months old, you can then go on to access 5 hours of free business advice each financial year. Now, this is a fantastic service if you can take that step to make some time to work on your business. I appreciate it's very hard. They can actually work with you on any aspect of running your business. They can be a sounding board. They can help you through a crisis. They can help you with cash flow management, help you with business planning, marketing planning. Any aspect of running a business, the advisors can absolutely assist you. So we have a very experienced team of advisors and they've all either running their own business now or have run their own business. So they know hard, how rewarding it is, and how they can really help you. We have advisors all around the state. And these slides, I should say, will be emailed to you after this presentation, so don't worry about writing everything down. It's a very flexible model. So whilst we have advisors all around the state that you can see, you can actually go to the website, the Business Advice website, or scan the QR code there and have a look at the bios of all of the advisors, and you can pick who you think best aligns with you. And so you can pick an advisor who might be at the opposite end of the state. If they are, then you can have an online meeting or a phone meeting with them. If you choose an advisor who's in your local area, you can have a face-to-face meeting together. But it's very flexible, and that's what we want it to be. You can self-select who you'd like to see. So the advisory services are a fantastic opportunity for you to continue to work on your business, continue to survive and sustain it. So please keep that in mind when you after this presentation. I'd like to also share one of our Australian government colleagues' offering. So as we know, digital skills and keeping up online and how to put your business out there so customers can find it is so very important, and it's not easy. So the Australian government offers the Digital Solutions Tasmania service, very low cost. So for $59, you can access 4 hours of coaching, and you can also then tap into the workshops and different webinars they offer as well. And they have a special online learning portal that you can have access to. So they have mentors all around the state, and they have different strengths in different areas in the digital space, whether it's social media, websites, marketing. So depending on what your needs are, they can match you with the right mentor. So there is eligibility criteria, very similar to our advice service offering. You need to be a small business, which many people are in Tasmania, employing less than 20 full-time equivalent staff. So 97% of businesses roughly in Tasmania are small, and they're mostly the businesses that we talk to and provide support to. But if you are a bigger business listening, you can come our way, and we can talk to you about what options exist within government for us to help you as well. So that you can see there is a small couple of concessions for people to not have to pay that fee if that's relevant for you. So you can go to the Digital Solutions website or contact the Business Tasmania team, and we can connect you with a digital mentor. So you can be seeing a business advisor for your business advice, and if you can make that time, you need some digital help, you can be seeing a digital mentor here as well. I'd like to just point out a couple of key features of the Business Tasmania homepage. In the middle, you'll see the subscribe to our newsletter, and I encourage everyone to do that. It's a really trusted, reliable source of information, and we get great feedback about it. It's a way in which, when there are new funding opportunities, particularly because many people call us asking, are there any new grants? Are there any loans that we can apply for? That's how you'll find out via the newsletter if there's any local, state or Australian opportunities. So we very keep our fingers to the pulse, so to speak, on making sure that what we know is available is promoted through our newsletter. So you have that opportunity to assess if you're eligible and then seek help from us, and our advisors can actually also help you with grant applications or tender applications if you ever see one that you think you're eligible for. So keep that in mind as well. So funding and support, that tile there will show you that we do keep a list of all of the Tasmanian funding opportunities, grants, loans, subsidies here. It is freely available. You do not need to pay for that information, despite there are organisations you can pay money to get the information. You don't need to. You can come here and access it, or go to our friends at business.gov.au, and they also have the same or very similar information. But often what people do, rather than, you can go to the website and kind of go through it all yourself and work it out, what a lot of people like to do is ring the Business Tasmania team and say, look, hi, Josh, I'm running a cafe and I'm wondering if there's a grant. I need to upgrade my coffee machine. I've been in business for 2 years. Is there anything available now? And then that way the team can tell you exactly what's on offer, but they can also work out while that you're having a chat with them, what are all the great things by way of other free services and programs that could help you as well. So I think that's the real benefit of picking up the phone and getting to know one of the Business Tasmania team. So these are just some small examples of how Business Tasmania can help. And but one of the last things I'll sort of sign off on is just flagging with you on our website. We have our emergency preparation toolkit, which is a fantastic step-by-step guide to help you to take some practical steps to prepare for the unexpected, such as fire, flood, an unexpected event. And then if it does occur, how to respond and then how to recover with our assistance. So if you don't have a copy, I'd encourage you to download a copy, or next when you see us at an event, grab a copy. When an emergency event or a significant disruption happens, the Business Tasmania team, are the point of contact for you to register your impact. And if this ever happens to you, please do reach out and let us know, because that enables the government to make more informed decisions about what support may be needed across the state when those dreadful situations occur. So please, grab one and think about preparing for the unexpected. We don't want to think it happens, but it does happen. And that's a really important part of running a business as well, is being prepared so you can actually recover better. So our contact details are there, but you will receive these slides, so you will have those to follow up later. So lots of great ways in which we can help you through the Business Tasmania team. So I'd like to, at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I will hand over to Stacey. But before I do, I should say, Josh, do we have any questions?
No questions for you at this time, Kel.
Thank you, Josh. Excellent. All right. Well, what I'll do, I'll hand over to Stacey. Thanks, Stace.
Thanks, Kelly. Great to be here today. This short session is really just about flagging some things that we can be aware of to firstly make sure that we're compliant with all of the things that we should be as employers, but also some tips on how we can, enhance our workplace culture, attract good people to our organisation and retain the ones that we want to keep. And it's really lovely to be able to bring this to you with the support of the Tasmanian Government through the Employer of Choice Assist service, which we'll tell you a little bit more about at the end of this session. But this again is a free service available to businesses in Tasmania with 19 or less FTEs. And it's one of the things that the Business Tasmania team might refer a business to when they call about a particular, workplace issue or question. So if you call Business Tasmania, all roads lead to Rome. They will definitely be able to put you in touch with us as well. So the Tasmanian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, one of our core business services is working with employers around their workforce and their workforce needs. And so this presentation has been developed just based on some of the things that we see that are happening in workplaces that could be rectified or could be avoided just by, avoiding some common mistakes. So the 4 things that we're going to talk about are consultation, award requirements, documentation and assumptions that we tend to make as employers. So out of order, I'm going to start with award requirements. So the businesses that we've been working with, particularly over the last 18 months, there's been some real challenges around understanding their modern award requirements. So if you're an organisation that pays your team members under a modern award, it's a really good idea to double check and make sure that you are actually paying people correctly. So we do have a wage increase coming in on the 1st of July. So those hourly rates will change again. And those rates will be published on the Fair Work website as of the 1st of July. But some of the things that we see are that employees have actually been misclassified and they're being paid under the wrong modern award. And that does not work very well because you don't get to choose which awards. So what we find is some employers are like, I don't know, we'll just put them under the miscellaneous award because that seems like a catch-all. But what happens if Fair Work were to conduct an audit or somebody was to raise an issue with Fair Work? They'd be looking at the type of work that somebody's performing, what industry you're in order to determine which award they would fall under. And then once we make sure that we're paying them under the correct modern award, looking at making sure that we've classified them correctly. So we've had some businesses that have received advice from organisations that are probably not the best positioned to provide that advice. To work out how to classify somebody, we need to actually know the ins and outs of the job that they're performing. Because under most awards, if people are doing a task over here, but most of their job is over here, that one task may mean that they're actually entitled to a higher rate of pay. And then just to make it a little bit more complicated, we've got the pay rates as well as penalty rates, shift allowances, and other allowances which are quite unique to different awards. There's some awards that have, hot work allowance. There's an allowance if you're a cleaner and you have to clean a toilet. All sorts of weird and wonderful things that if you're busy running your business, you really don't want to be concerned with scrolling through pages and pages of quite heavy documentation. Talk to the Workplace Relations Helpline and they're able to help you with that. And we're really pleased to be able to say that most businesses can access that by calling Business Tasmania. So if you're worried about your pay rates, encourage you to reach out and just double check those. We also have wage and super theft legislation that has come into place as of the 1st of January this year. So there's never been a time where it's been more important to make sure that we're across these requirements. The other area that we're finding around paying people is superannuation contributions. So if you haven't reviewed these recently, I would strongly recommend you do so. If you have independent contractors, you should be paying them superannuation in line with the super guarantee. A lot of businesses are not aware of this. That's about as far as my advice goes when it comes to super because it's an Australian Tax Office requirement, not a Fair Work Ombudsman area or a Fair Work Act area. So just make sure that you've got the best advice. And we also have another increase to that super guarantee coming through on the 1st of July this year. Being aware of any higher duties payments, if you have people acting in roles that are above what they're normally being paid for, they should be paid. And whether or not there's an opportunity for you to look at using individual flexibility agreements to build some flexibility into the award, provided that benefits both you and your employee. So there are a few things there that it's worth just being aware of. And as I said, if you've got any concerns about any of that, I strongly encourage you to reach out to Business Tas and they'll be able to direct you to some professional advice in that area at no cost. The other area that we see is often challenging for employers, and this is partly because of time and partly because, consultation with employees can be time-consuming and challenging, and sometimes people raise things that are not really what you wanted to be raised when you're consulting with them. But employee consultation is really important, A, from a compliance perspective, so it's a requirement of workplace health and safety legislation. It's also a requirement of the Fair Work Act. But consultation builds a great workplace culture. If we can manage it effectively, put some good parameters around what we're consulting on, engaging with your employees to solve workplace problems or identify better ways of doing things is actually a win-win for your business, but also for your employees. You can do this in a range of ways. It doesn't have to be an expensive, time-consuming exercise. If you're already holding toolbox meetings or staff meetings, then, have some things that you might like to consult with staff on as part of those agendas. You might like to think about doing surveys with your staff. These don't have to be long and extensive. They can be quite short and sharp. You might just have an informal chat with people about ideas or thoughts or challenges that they're experiencing. You could go down the old school path of having suggestion boxes if that's something that you think might work in your workplace, or a virtual suggestion box. You can also consult with people as part of the performance review process. What's working for them, what's not, what could we be doing as a business to make your life easier? All within reason, of course. We'd all like a $10,000 pay rise and a nice new company car, but that's not necessarily going to be the reality. And look, most people are not going to ask for that. You might think about doing a team day. Team days are a great way to bring the team together, have a chat about workplace related things. or even a team social event is a way that you can consult with staff. So it really depends on the type of industry that you're working in and how your workplace works, because sometimes not everybody's in the same place at the same time. Or sometimes we all need to be, you know, on the floor or front of house, and so it's not possible to pull everybody offline during work hours. And if you are requesting that people attend a staff meeting and saying that's compulsory, there is a requirement to pay people to attend those meetings, no matter how much beer and pizza you might provide as a lure. Sorry,
Stacey, no, I was just about to say, it's made me laugh. On that point, I might just
Yes.
remind everyone about how they can ask a question.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So you're very, very welcome to ask a question either by, if you're on a computer, the Q&A function is at the top of your screen, sort of in the middle. If you're on a mobile, you should, through the 3 dots, be able to find your Q&A function there. If you write your question down, I can pose the question to Stacey on your behalf, or you can either raise your virtual hand. So if you're on a computer, you'll be able to see the little raise hand at the top of the screen, just next to the Q&A. Or if you're on a mobile, again, through the 3 dots, and you can raise your hand, and then Josh will enable your functionality for you to ask your own question. So do feel free to do that at any time. Thanks, Stace.
Thanks, Kel. That's a really good reminder. And it's also a reminder to me to mention the fact that we did receive the questions that people asked as part of the registration process. And some of what we'll talk about in this presentation will cover that off in a generic sense. But again, we encourage you to contact us through Business Tasmania or directly, and I'll give you some information on how you can do that to discuss your specific circumstances. So I think there are a few questions about retaining staff. So a lot of the things that I'm talking about here are good retention measures. But when we can have a chat to you one-on-one, we might be able to identify some things in your workplace that might actually be driving some of that turnover. You know, we've been working with some workplaces lately where there's quite the divide between the younger generation workforce and the older generation workforce, and that's driving a huge amount of turnover for them with their young apprentices or trainees or younger employees. So some of this generic stuff might help, but it actually might be something a bit more targeted for your organisation, like helping your supervisors understand that people don't learn the way that they learnt 20 or 30 years ago, and we can't necessarily manage and communicate the way we used to. So if you feel like you haven't quite got the answers to your questions, you can certainly reach out after this session as well.
We do have a question now, Stace.
Oh, yay, I love a question.
Yes, I know, I'm excited. Does the 3-hour minimum still apply for casuals when it's a staff meeting?
That would depend on your award. So if your award specifies that the minimum shift is 3 hours, then yes, technically you would need to pay them the 3 hours to attend that staff meeting. And again, this is something that we can do some individual flexibility arrangements around. There's a little bit of work setting them up. But if that's a common issue for you, that there's something in the award that's making it hard for you to do things or hard for your employees to work some extra hours, talk to us about some ways around it. That's one of our specialties, is trying to find something that works for the business and the employee, that's also compliant with Fair Work requirements. Yeah. And that's the challenge with out-of-hours staff meetings, because if you only want them for an hour, paying them for 3 seems a little bit excessive.
Thanks, Stace.
Yeah, good question. Thank you. Okay, so the other area that we find is a challenge for businesses and can often not be uncovered until there is quite a big problem is a lack of workplace documentation, or workplace documentation that doesn't actually reflect the workplace. So the first one of those is employment contracts. We actually have a free workshop coming up on that on Monday, because some people don't use employment contracts, and if you're paying under the award, that's fine, but there's some things that you might want to consider putting in writing when you're employing staff. Other people have employment contracts that are war and peace, and they're like 10 pages long. And you need to remember, when you're writing an employment contract, that if you want to change something in that contract, you actually need to get the employee to sign a new contract. And also, if you don't do what it says you're going to do in that employment contract, you are in fact in breach of your own contract, which could also pose some challenges if you have an employee that is very aware of their rights or happens to have a lawyer or, you know, a union rep in their circle of contacts. So employment contracts need to be quite succinct. They should only have a few pieces of information in them that really set up the employment relationship. Most of this stuff is governed by the Fair Work Act anyway. So if you've got something in your contract that's not compliant with the Act, then it doesn't matter what you've got written in your contract, the Act will take precedence. And then, so things like we've seen in employment contracts is like a leave policy. So when the organisation wants to change the leave policy, they have to change everybody's employment contracts. So we really recommend having an employment contract and a very clear one that states the nature of the employment and what people are going to be compensated, with a few other bits and pieces in it, but they shouldn't be too long. They also need to be consistent with the Fair Work Act and the National Employment Standards. The other area of documentation that's often lacking, but probably happens in practice, is an induction. And an induction is so important for new employees because it helps them understand what the expectations of the workplace are. It helps them stay safe. And it also helps them understand, you know, really basic workplace do's and don'ts. So, you know, this is where you park when you come to work. You know, this is where you keep your lunch. This is where we go if there's an emergency evacuation. Here are some things in our workplace that could really hurt you if you're not sure, if you don't know about them. And having that signed off, and it doesn't have to be lengthy. It could just be a really simple one-page checklist, but it makes sure that we've actually covered off the things that we need to cover off with our new employee. And we've got some evidence that we did that, because that's the most risky time for new employees in your business, is their first few months of employment. It's the most likely time somebody might be injured or have an accident in the workplace. But it is also a legal requirement to provide some sort of induction. And it's great if you're doing it, but if you're not documenting it and you need some evidence, it's going to be very difficult to provide that evidence without appropriate documentation. Sorry, Kel.
Sorry, Stacey, I've got a question. I think it's probably one for you and I. I noticed on the website that many of these services are not available to companies with 20 or more employees. Is this the case? If so, can you give me some indication of which are available? Excuse me, because we can actually have 21, including 3 casuals. So for our small business, say the advice service offerings, it's for full-time equivalent staff. So it may well be, depending on if you've got a mix of casuals and part-times, you might be all right. So it's the full-time equivalent. So that would be the key to working out if you're eligible. And if that's the case, that's fantastic. If it is that you're above and beyond, I'm thinking about our business advice services. I'll let Stacey talk about what she would suggest for what she's offering. If you are definitely way above and your full-time equivalence is above the 20, then what we would do is have a conversation and just work out what it is that you need assistance with and what industry are you in. Is it another area within our department that can actually provide support? So that's what, we could have a conversation and work that out from our perspective for business advice.
Yeah, great. And the example that was provided in that question, we would absolutely work with you under this program. So we have a little bit of flexibility to work with businesses that might be just over that limit. And I'm kind of working to get that expanded a little bit. The idea is that, and it would be similar for the Business Tas services, if you're a small business, you probably don't, have a truckload of cash sitting around to, splash around with a bunch of consultants. Whereas if you're a business with 100 employees and you're turning over a few $1 million a year, there's an expectation you'd probably pay for this kind of stuff yourself. So we'd be more than happy to have a chat with that particular business and definitely wouldn't rule them out on those grounds. But it can be a little bit hard if you're on the cusp, because just because you've got 20 full-time equivalent employees doesn't mean that you go, I'm going to go and employ myself an accountant and a business advisor and an HR specialist. It doesn't quite work like that, does it?
Yeah, that's right. So reach out and we can work it out with you.
If we can say yes, we always will.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Kel. I'll have to keep looking at you to make sure that I'm not missing the questions. The compulsory paperwork. So Depending on who you employ, you could have about 3 different Fair Work Information Statement sign-offs. There is one for fixed-term employees, there is one for casual employees, and there is a standard Fair Work Information Statement that needs to be provided upon commencement of employment to all employees. I would be strongly advising that you send this via email because it provides you with an automatic paper trail to demonstrate that you have done that. There are some other requirements around the casual employment information statement that needs to get sent every 6 and 12 months if you are a business, just to confuse the situation, with 15 or more staff, and that's headcount, because it's Fair Work interpretation of a small business, not the state government interpretation. And then if you are a small business, so you have less than 15 headcount, you need to send the casual employment statement after 12 months, as well as on commencement, and then that's all that you need to send out. But all of that information is available on the Fair Work website, because I appreciate it's very confusing. The key is, are you sending that paperwork, and do you have a sign off to say that you've sent it? Position descriptions are very helpful, particularly if you think about what I was talking about before in relation to classifying people under the appropriate award and the appropriate pay rate. So your position descriptions set out what the role is, so very useful for recruitment, very useful for the people performing the task, because it tells me what is my job, what might be my job, but also potentially what's not my job. And if you've got performance issues and you don't have a position description, very difficult to manage those issues without having something along the lines of a position description or a job description. The other workplace documentation that is critical for some aspects is workplace policies. So again, if you have a smaller business, you don't need to have 400 policies and procedures, but there are some that we would not recommend that you would be in business without. One is a workplace health and safety policy. Another one is a sexual harassment and discrimination policy. There is a legal requirement for all employers to have these types of things in place to prevent sexual harassment. Bullying is another one in the workplace, as well as some things around the use of IT, having a good process if there's a performance issue. So what is your performance and conduct policy? What's the process if somebody's not performing in their role? This is just as useful for managers or business owners to have as it is for the employee, because if you're not dealing with this stuff all the time, a policy or a procedure can give you a step-by-step guide on how to manage performance within the requirements of the legislation. And any other areas of risk for your business. So you think about the things that might pose the most risk to your organisation. Having a good leave policy is also important. We've had a few businesses through our program that have staff that are really taking advantage of nice employers and taking leave at the last minute or not providing evidence. And if you don't have a leave policy, it's very difficult to be able to communicate your expectations and manage people against those. Procedures are really important. If you've got things that you need to have done consistently and done to a particular standard or a certain way, I'd strongly suggest investing in developing some procedures. We've just started using an app here called Scribe. So if it's an online procedure, you can grab the app. There's a fair bit you can do with the free version, but there's also a paid version. But it will basically watch you do processes on computers, and it will write your process then, and you've just got to edit. But if it's a physical practice, it's not happening on the computer, you know, wherever possible, I would be using things like video or photos to support the written procedure, to make sure that everybody in the workplace can understand it. Having checklists for routine tasks. So these are the things that we should have that set people up for success. Don't be frustrated because somebody's not packing up properly at the end of the day. If you don't have a checklist or a procedure, you know, they're probably thinking about what they've got to get for dinner on the way home from the supermarket, not that they have to, I don't know, turn on the alarm or turn off the coffee machine or whatever jobs they might have. So make it easy for people to be successful in their roles. Workplace health and safety. It's huge. There's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we have in place. But for small businesses, the critical thing is, do you have a process if your team members see something or experience something that is not safe? Do they know what to do to report that? that's the most critical thing, is that your team understand that if something is unsafe, they should not proceed, and that they need to report it so that you can do something about it. And a lot of times, again, this happens verbally in workplaces, but you do need to have a written record of you doing this in the event that somebody was injured in your workplace, God forbid. You need to have some documentation to show that you were doing something to try and make your workplace safer. And we also have things like a psychosocial code of practice now. So it extends past making sure people are not slipping over or blocking exits and entrances. It extends to making sure that people feel safe in the workplace, both physically and psychologically, which can be a lot. Again, you want to be doing whatever it is that you do in your business. You don't want to be sitting there writing policies about psychosocial hazards. So lean into the free services that are available to you to be able to help you get some of this stuff done, and you don't need to spend your time and energy doing it. The last one of those workplace documentation, and this is probably the one that causes the most problems, is if you are having performance discussions with people, document the discussion. Because if it's not documented, it didn't happen, which means you could have been having performance discussions with somebody for 6 months. You're finally fed up and you've decided that that's it, I've had enough, I want to terminate this person. If none of that was in writing, you will need to start from the beginning. So anytime you have a chat with somebody, just, send a friendly email afterwards, thanks, Kel, great chat today. As discussed, we're really going to work on making sure we set the alarm before we leave at night time, or whatever, we've discussed, but very, it doesn't have to be formal, but something to show that you've had those conversations is very critical. Any more questions before I change slides, Kel?
No more questions at the moment.
Okie dokie. Let's have a look at some assumptions that people make. Assumption 1 is that workplace conflicts or issues will go away if we ignore them. And wouldn't that be a wonderful world if that happened? In fact, often what happens is they escalate. And when they escalate to a certain point, our experiences is that you tend to lose the people in your organisation that you might have wanted to keep. Or it can turn into quite a complex and expensive workers' compensation claim. There's a whole bunch of consequences for us to not address some of this. And look, not all conflicts in the workplace are centred around workplace issues. This is Tasmania. We've often got, relatives and friends working with each other. So if it's not a workplace issue, you still need to address it and ask for it to be kept out of the workplace so that your other team members are not affected. Also, don't assume that people are happy and they're not planning on leaving. There's some statistics, which I think I'll talk about in a minute, that around 40% of people are planning on leaving their job in the next 12 months. We'll talk about some of the reasons why in a minute. Don't assume because something's never been an issue before, it won't be in the future. Or that if people aren't giving you feedback and suggestions that everything is fine, they might have just given up. Don't necessarily think or assume that the way that you've always done things is the best way, and that's where that staff consultation can be really valuable in coming up with different ways of doing things, or maybe even different products and services that your customers might want. Don't see training and upskilling as a waste of money, as well people will just leave anyway, because the flip side of that is that you don't invest in them and then they stay in your business. And also don't assume that you don't need to consult with your staff, that if they want something, they'll tell you, because there is a massive section of the workforce that will not tell you. They will expect you to ask them, and then you might get some of that information. So they're just some common assumptions that we see in workplaces that can sometimes lead to negative impacts on workplace culture or staff turnover. There we go. I got that nearly right. The 2023 survey reported that 37% of Australians employees plan to change jobs in the next 6 months. So they're looking for more money, they're looking for career progression, or they've had no work-life balance, or they're feeling burnt out. We saw a massive amount of this during COVID. Or they're leaving because of poor leadership or workplace culture. So they're not leaving for all 4 of those, they're leaving for one of those reasons normally. Which is all well and good. I'm sure you're sitting there going, well, that's nice. I've got a small business. They can't progress in my business, or I've got a limited budget for wages. I can't give them more money. So let's have a look at some of the things that we might be able to do instead. I'm going to come back to that slide. So some non-financial benefits that you might like to offer your team members. So can you give them a staff discount? Do you have other businesses that you work with that might be willing to offer a discount to your staff? If you have the ability to offer flexible working arrangements, most of the people I know that have this as a benefit can't put a price on it. Being able to attend an assembly at school, or being able to take my mother to a doctor's appointment, or being able to go and do my basket weaving classes at lunchtime is worth a lot more in many cases than what a significant pay increase would be for some people. So try not to rule it out straight away. Think about how you might make it work. You can link more money to better performance. If somebody wants more money and you can't give it to them, maybe you can create some targets for them to achieve that would generate more revenue for you, or save money for you, that might free up some cash for a performance bonus. Having staff social events, they don't have to be big and expensive. You might have a company car that's sitting in your car park out of hours. Could we offer that to that person as a bit of a perk? If it's sitting there doing nothing anyway, we might as well use it for something. Maybe they want career growth, so you might help access some coaching or mentoring for them, or you might coach or mentor them. Training and development, there's often lots of opportunities, and they're usually advertised through Business Tas if there's some great training opportunities that might be subsidised by government or another organisation. Letting them network. If you have the ability to attend networking events like the one that we've got tonight, there'll be lots of different businesses there. Some people would find that a real perk. Offering mental health support and assistance. This is becoming more of an expectation than a benefit, but depends on where you're at in terms of your journey in that space. And that might be through an employee assistance program. And if you're not sure what one of those is, reach out, because I can step you through it, and it's not as expensive as it sounds. Or you might offer additional leave. I was only talking to an employer about this yesterday, that they couldn't afford to give the person more money, but the person really liked time off. So that role didn't need backfilling. So, offer them an extra week's leave a year instead of giving them a pay increase. Or some organisations have a little perk of a birthday day off if that works for your organisation. We put some parameters around that. It's got to be within so many weeks of your actual birthday, so people don't bank them up for 5 years and then ask for a week off. And I just wanted to jump back to this because I was just talking about this in the assumptions around if you can tell people are happy at work. We've run a lot of employee engagement surveys in the last 12 months, really useful, and we run them on your behalf so that people feel like they can be really honest in them. We don't provide direct comments back to you. We'll summarise the themes of the feedback from the survey results. You might just observe people. What's the vibe? Like, is everybody really quiet and not talking to each other? Or are people really kind of friendly and interacting with each other throughout the day? Having a one-on-one meeting with somebody and just asking them what's going on, how do you feel about the workplace? You never know, you might just get an honest answer. Performance reviews, again, are a good opportunity, or just having informal chats with people and sort of observing and listening to what's being said and not being said in the workplace. If you've got people grumbling around things like nobody tells me anything around here, it's probably worth checking in on that statement just to find out what information they're not getting that they think they should be. How are we going, Kel? Any questions?
Oh, good. Still plenty of time for questions, but none at the moment.
Fantastic. Okay. Do love a good question. All right. So the other reason people leave is that lack of career progression. And whilst you might not be able to make them the general manager tomorrow, there are some other things that we can do to retain people in our organisation for a little bit longer. And that includes giving them opportunities to upskill. So you might start letting them do some tasks that might be your responsibility or the responsibility of somebody more senior, or even acting in those roles when those people take leave. It's a really good way to give people some development without necessarily having to promote them. The other thing you could do is cross-skill them. So maybe you've got different parts of your business and they're only working in one. We could give them a little bit of exposure to those other parts of the business and help build their skills that way. You can give them some more responsibility. So if you do have maybe a junior staff member or somebody that's new, you could let them be their buddy or their mentor. Or if they've decided that they want to go away and become, I don't know, the world's most wonderful flower arranger, you might be able to accommodate their roster or their work hours around them studying, so you can at least keep them in your organisation for a little bit longer while they're working towards, their career goals. So there's a lot of different options that can sometimes help retain people in our business for a bit longer. The other reason people leave is that work-life balance and burnout. So check your workplace culture. If you've got a workplace that puts value on people based on how many hours they're working, that can really be a big factor in terms of that burnout. And realistically, when we're getting people to work massive amounts of hours a week, we're not getting any more out of them. Once people have done 45 hours in a week, the research shows that any outputs that they have after that point are really not worth it because they're probably going to need to be redone. So you have impacts on productivity. People find it hard to concentrate if they've got like their workload is too much for them. That will often lead to physical and mental health problems, including absenteeism from the workplace, which makes it even worse because then all the work's banking up while they're not there. It can lead to an unhealthy workplace culture where there's that competition about how many hours people are putting in. People that don't want to work like that are going to leave. And you'll find that people become less engaged if they feel that they're sort of being overworked. So some of the things that you can do to help people achieve this elusive work-life balance, I feel like this is a misnomer because wouldn't it be nice to spend an equal amount of time in my life as I do at my work, but at least feeling like people are not spending their whole life at work. Ask your employees what they need to feel like they have a better balance between work and life. Everyone's going to have a different answer. Try and manage expectations in terms of both customer expectations and team expectations. That comes down to that consultation and communication again. Encouraging people to leave at their scheduled finish time. If somebody's still there, people have said to me before, because I have a bit of a trait of working too many hours, you're not a neurosurgeon, Stacey, nobody's going to die if you don't get that thing done today, and sort of helping people understand that. Yes, things are important, but going home and having dinner with your family is also important. Have a look and see if that working long hours is celebrated, as I said before. View that work-life balance as an investment, not a cost. I think that's a really important way of seeing that. Making sure that we're equally distributing workloads. We do have a tendency to load up people that say yes and tend to get more stuff done than people that maybe take a bit longer with things. Encourage people to look after their health and well-being and make suggestions for how we can have a better balance. Make sure your managers are role modelling that. That can be really hard if you're a business owner. Sometimes you working 60 or 70 hours a week is the difference between making a profit and not. So maybe even just communicating that to people, like, it's okay for me, I'm choosing to do this. This is my business, but I don't expect the same from you. And create a process so that people can actually make requests. So it might be as simple as sending you an email or raising it in a meeting or whatever it might be, but so people will know that they can come and ask for those things if they need them.
I have a question, Stace.
Excellent.
Good question here. What are the rules around sending staff emails? Do they need to be sent during business hours?
Oh, fantastic question. No, they don't have to be. The main thing I would include if I didn't expect a response outside of work hours is that I'm sending this now, but I don't expect you to respond until you're back at work tomorrow. So that's one of the changes that we've had that have come through with the right to disconnect. That right to disconnect is the right for employees to not respond to out of hours contact. It's not illegal to contact your team members out of hours. It's just that we don't necessarily expect them to respond. But if you've got somebody on $100,000 a year and they're doing a sales role, they are compensated for that out of hours contact. Whereas if you've got somebody on $22.75 an hour that's working a roster and they're paid on that hourly rate, then there would not be an expectation for them to respond, unless, of course, it's something like, can you work tomorrow? Or could you start an hour early because such and such is sick, or this person needs this? That's very different to the client wants you to call them and I know that you're at home. So that's another thing that we would include in an employment contract, bit of clarification around the out of hours contact. Yeah, it's a challenging one. We've had a lot of changes, and trying to keep up with them is very difficult. But again, any of those sorts of questions can be answered through that Workplace Relations Helpline service, which is available by calling Business Tas. So yeah, they'd be more than happy to step you through any of those kind of changes that you're vaguely aware of, but you're not sure what the actual implication for your business is. Thank you. Good question.
Thanks, Stace.
All right, so how do we keep people? So we do need to consider having competitive compensation and benefits. And when I say competitive, it doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, $10 over the award rate. We can be a bit clever about how we do that, and that includes that flexibility. Offering growth and development opportunities in line with what your business can afford and what your industry might have available. Recognition. Don't underestimate the value of a thank you. Thank you so much for all your efforts this week. I really appreciate it. I can still remember asking my mum that question. My parents ran hotels when I was growing up, and my first shift, my mum was like saying thank you to everybody when they left, and I was like 15, and I'm like, what are you saying thank you for? Don't you pay them? And she's just like, oh, Stacey, you need to show more than just, you know, paying somebody in a way of recognising them and thanking them for their work. And I was like, okay, good tip. Thank you very much. So a bit of recognition never goes astray. Yeah, that work-life balance, giving people meaningful and challenging work. Some people are happy just to do the, you know, same thing day in, day out, cool bananas. But if you've got people that are looking for more, then try and give them some more meaningful and challenging things to work on. Might mean that you don't have to do it all. People looking for some job security. So that will vary depending on the nature of your industry. If you're working in a not-for-profit and you were waiting on some budget announcements, you've probably got that issue right now. All I can say to you is make sure that you're communicating with your team. You know, they know that you can't necessarily pull job security out of a hat for them, but as long as they feel like they're informed along the way, that'll often help keep them on board. Transparency and trust. You know, you're better to over-communicate than to under-communicate because that builds trust with people. Have a good set of company values that actually reflect your organisation and are embedded into your culture. It's a big part of the younger generation wanting to work for organisations with values that align to theirs. Supportive leadership. Don't assume just because somebody's really good at the job that they're going to make a great supervisor or manager. Very different skill set. Deal with that a lot. And having a supportive team, so supportive colleagues that are willing to help each other out is also a reason that people stay. As I said, this program or this workshop is kind of part of our Employer of Choice Assist program. But I will differentiate that from Employer of Choice, which is a recognition program run by Jobs Tasmania. This year's nominations have closed and the judging's just finished, but it opens every year. And it's free. It's designed to recognise workplaces or employers that create and maintain great workplaces. So if you think you're a great workplace, keep an eye on the Business Tas newsletter because it'll get promoted through there when it's open again. But it's a really good way of getting some validation that you're doing some great things, get some feedback on your business, and you get a cool logo to put on your job ads and your website and your company cars or whatever you might want to do with it to show that you're amongst the best of the best. And the program that we're running through TCCI, funded by by Jobs Tasmania, is Employer of Choice Assist, which is really a support service around your workforce, your workplace culture. It includes Fair Work advice, completely free, no limit on hours. We will work with you to achieve your objectives. Our ultimate goal would be to get you to that Employer of Choice status, but we recognise not everybody wants to do that. But yeah, if you've been meaning to, I don't know, write an employee handbook, update your policies, you want to run a employee engagement survey, just reach out to us. We'd be happy to have a chat with you and do whatever we can to help. So I will just quickly pop that QR code up there if you want to grab that, but we'll also send some information out after the session. And as I said, you can get to us through Business Tasmania or through TCCI if you've got our contact details. But that's it from me. Hopefully I've stuck to time, Kel.
Fabulous, Stace. We've still got time for questions. If anyone's sitting there with a burning question, you can put it in the Q&A or raise your virtual hand. Otherwise, we'll send the slides out and this session will be recorded and it's be made available on our Business Tasmania YouTube channel by the end of the week. So no last questions by the looks of it. So thank you, Stacey. That was great. I'm sure everyone got a lot out of that. I'd like to thank everyone for their time. Appreciate that you're very busy. We will send you a short online survey to complete tomorrow. We'd very much love you to do that so that we can understand what you thought of today's session, and also it's an opportunity for you to tell us what other events you'd like to see us run, whether that's online or face-to-face. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you at another event coming very soon. So thank you.